The Great Hall of the Federation Council was filled with over 300 delegates from across the galaxy. They sat in curved rows that rose up toward the domed ceiling, where holographic stars turned slowly in the darkness. Ambassador Torvax of the Velthrin people stood at the central podium, his 4 arms folded across his narrow chest. His gray skin seemed pale under the bright lights. "We have gathered here today to discuss Resolution 7742, Torvax said. His voice was calm, but those who knew him could see the tension in his eyes. The formal ban on human participation in any Federation military action. A murmur ran through the assembly. Some delegates nodded their heads, others shifted in their seats. A few looked uncomfortable. Before we vote, Torvax continued, I believe it is important that we review the events that led us to this moment. Many of you were not present during the Corven campaign. You have read the reports. You have seen the numbers, but numbers cannot capture what truly happened. He paused and looked across the hall. Numbers cannot show you the fear. The Corven campaign had begun 2 standard years ago. The Corven Collective, a machine intelligence that had consumed 17 star systems, had turned its attention toward Federation space. Their fleet was massive, their technology was advanced, and they did not negotiate. The Federation had prepared for war. 32 member species contributed ships and soldiers to the defense fleet. The Velthrin provided their famous shield technology. The Hariks gave their plasma cannons. The Donari offered their tactical mines. And the humans, newest members of the Federation, sent a single battalion of 5,000 soldiers. At the time, no one had expected much from them. Humans had only been part of the Federation for 12 years. Their technology was still developing. Their ships were slower than most. Their weapons seemed ordinary. But that was before Nexus 7. Nexus 7 was a space station at the edge of Federation territory. It served as a trading hub and refueling point. When the Corven fleet arrived, Nexus 7 became the first line of defense. The Federation sent a combined force of 40,000 soldiers to hold the station while the main fleet assembled. General Yavrak of the Donari was placed in command. He was old and experienced. He had fought in 3 major conflicts. He knew how to manage a defense. The humans were assigned to Sector 12, a minor corridor that connected the cargo bays to the main reactor. It was not an important position. Most expected the real fighting to happen near the command center and the weapons platforms. The Corven arrived on the 3rd day of preparation. Their ships blocked out the stars. Their drones poured toward the station like a dark river. The first wave hit the outer defenses within minutes. General Yavrak watched the battle unfold from the command center. The screens showed red markers spreading across the station map. Defense teams reported casualties. Shield generators began to fail. Sector 4 is breached, an officer reported. Harik's forces requesting support. Send the reserve unit, Yavrak ordered. Sector 8 has fallen. Velthrin forces have retreated to secondary positions. Yavrak felt the weight of command pressing down on him. The Corven were moving faster than anyone had predicted. Their machines did not tire. They did not fear. They simply kept coming. Sir, another officer said, we have an unusual report from Sector 12. The cargo corridor, what about it? The human unit is requesting additional ammunition. They say they have stopped the enemy advance, but they are running low on supplies. Yavrak blinked. Stop the advance. The Corven have broken through every other position. How have the humans held? Unknown, sir. Should I redirect resources? Yavrak thought for a moment. Every other sector was struggling. If the humans could actually hold, they might be able to buy time for reinforcements. Send them what they need, he said, and send me a visual feed. I want to see what is happening. The screen changed to show Sector 12. What Yavrak saw made him stop breathing. The corridor was filled with wreckage. Broken Corvan machines lay in piles along the walls. Sparks flew from damaged wiring. Smoke hung in the air like fog. And in the center of it all stood the humans. They had built barricades from cargo containers. They had set up firing positions at every angle, and they were fighting with a ferocity that Yavrak had never seen. One human soldier stood on top of a container, firing a heavy weapon at the incoming machines. Another dragged a wounded comrade behind cover while still shooting with one hand. A third was using a piece of broken metal as a club, smashing a Corvan drone that had gotten too close. "They are not retreating," Yavrak whispered. "Even when the machines get close, they do not retreat." "No, sir," the officer said. His voice was quiet. "They seem to be pushing forward." Yavrak watched as a group of humans charged into a wave of Corvan machines. They moved with coordination and speed. They covered each other. They shouted commands and encouragement, and they did not stop. In his 50 years of military service, Yavrak had seen many things. He had seen courage and cowardice. He had seen victories and defeats, but he had never seen anything like this. The humans were not just fighting, they were hunting. "Sir," the officer said, "Corvan forces are redirecting to Sector 12. They are sending 3 times the units." "They have noticed," Yavrak said. "The machines are adapting. Should we send support?" Yavrak looked at the screen. The humans were already preparing. They were moving equipment. They were checking weapons. They looked tired and wounded, but there was something in their faces, something that made Yavrak uncomfortable. They were smiling. "Send them everything we can spare," Yavrak said, "and start moving our reserves to Sector 12. I think we may have found our new front line." The battle for Nexus 7 lasted for 8 more hours. During that time, the humans held Sector 12 against everything the Corvan sent. They lost soldiers. They ran out of ammunition twice. They fought with knives and bare hands when they had to. But they held. When the Federation fleet finally arrived, they found Nexus 7 still standing. Barely. Of the 40,000 soldiers who had defended the station, only 12,000 survived. Most of the station was in ruins. But Sector 12 was secure. And of the 5,000 humans who had defended it, 4,300 were still alive. The numbers spread through the fleet within hours. Whispers became conversations. Conversations became arguments. How had the humans survived? How had they held when everyone else had fallen? General Yavrak filed his report. In it, he included a line that would be quoted many times in the years to come. "The humans do not fight like soldiers. They fight like something else. Something I do not have a word for. Something that does not stop." Ambassador Torvax paused in his speech to let the delegates absorb what he had said. He could see the reactions on their faces. Some looked impressed. Others looked worried. A few looked like they did not believe him. "What happened at Nexus 7 was only the beginning," Torvax continued. "The Federation High Command made a decision after the station was secured. They decided to give the humans a larger role in the campaign." He pressed a button on the podium, and a holographic map appeared above the assembly. It showed the Corvan collective territory, marked in red, and Federation space, marked in blue. Between them was a chain of star systems. "The Vardek Corridor," Torvax said. 12 star systems that served as the main path for Corvan expansion. High Command believed that if we could capture these systems, we could stop the Corvan advance and protect the core worlds. The campaign was expected to take 2 years. We assembled a fleet of 3,000 ships and an army of 2 million soldiers from across the Federation. The humans contributed 100,000 troops and 200 ships. He paused again. The campaign lasted 4 months. Murmurs filled the hall. 4 months. That was impossible. The Corvan had some of the most advanced defenses in the known galaxy. Their machine armies could produce new units faster than any organic species could breed soldiers. I see that many of you doubt me, Torvax said. Let me show you what happened. The holographic map changed to show the first system in the corridor. Vardak 1. It was heavily fortified. The Corvan had built weapon platforms around every planet. They had placed minefields throughout the system. They had enough defensive drones to darken the sun. The Federation plan was to spend 3 weeks wearing down the defenses before attempting a ground invasion, Torvax said. The human commander had a different idea. The map showed the movement of ships. The Federation fleet moved into position, preparing for a slow assault. But a small group of vessels broke away and headed directly toward the planet. General Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Force requested permission to lead a direct assault, Torvax said. High Command denied the request. They said it was too dangerous. General Chen went anyway. The room fell silent. Going against direct orders was a serious offense in the Federation military. It could mean court-martial. It could mean imprisonment. But the humans had done it. Her forces consisted of 50 ships and 20,000 soldiers, Torvax continued. They flew through the minefields. They fought through the defense platforms. They landed on the planet's surface while still under fire. They lost 12 ships and 3,000 soldiers in the approach. But they reached the ground, and once they were on the ground, they did something that no one expected. The map zoomed in to show the planet's surface. The main Corvan factory complex was visible, a massive structure of metal and machinery that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. The Corvan expected a siege, Torvax said. They expected the humans to set up positions and wait for reinforcements. They expected a long, careful campaign. Instead, General Chen ordered an immediate assault on the central factory. Her soldiers moved without rest. They advanced through Corvan defenses for 72 hours straight. They did not stop to eat. They barely stopped to treat their wounded. They pushed forward like the machines they were fighting. No, Torvax corrected himself. They pushed harder than the machines. The map showed the human advance. Red markers representing Corvan units fell one by one. The humans moved through the complex like a blade through water. They adapted to every defense. They found solutions to every problem. On the third day, General Chen personally led a team into the central control hub, Torvax said. They fought through 5 levels of security. They destroyed the main processing core. And when the Corvan sent a termination unit to stop them, General Chen killed it with a piece of broken machinery. He let that sink in. A termination unit was a Corvan elite soldier. It was 3 meters tall, covered in armor, and equipped with weapons that could destroy a tank. And a human had killed one with a piece of scrap metal. Vardak 1 fell in 4 days, Torvax said. The Federation had expected 3 months. The humans did not wait for the rest of the fleet. They refueled, resupplied, and moved to Vardak 2. They arrived before High Command had even finished reviewing their reports. The pattern repeated. The humans struck fast and hard. They used tactics that no other species would consider. They took risks that seemed insane. And they won. By the 2nd month, Torvax said, the Corvan had begun to change their strategy. They stopped trying to hold systems. Instead, they focused all their resources on destroying the human forces. They failed. At Vardak 7, the Corvan sent a fleet specifically designed to counter human tactics. They used new weapons. They used new defenses. They sent 10 times the normal number of machines. General Chen responded by sending her troops through an asteroid field that the Corvan thought was impossible to cross. She attacked from above while the Corvan were looking at the front. By the time they realized what was happening, the humans were already inside their command center. Torvax looked at the delegates. Do you understand what I am telling you? The Corvan are machines. They calculate, they predict, they analyze, but they could not predict the humans. They could not calculate human determination. They could not analyze human creativity. Because the humans do not fight the way machines expect. They do not even fight the way organic species expect. They fight with something else, something that cannot be programmed or predicted. He took a breath. They fight with what they call passion. The word hung in the air. Passion. It was a concept that many Federation species understood in theory, but to see it in action, to see what it could do when applied to warfare, was something different. The campaign ended at Vardek 12, Torvax said. The Corvan had concentrated everything they had left in that system. It was their last stronghold. They had built defenses that should have taken years to break. The humans broke them in 6 days. General Chen led the final assault herself. She walked into the Corvan command structure with nothing but a sidearm and a knife. Her soldiers followed her. They did not question. They did not hesitate. When they emerged, the Corvan collective was finished. Their central intelligence had been destroyed. Their production facilities were slag. Their fleet was drifting debris. The war was over. Torvax turned off the holographic display. The hall was silent. The official casualty reports list Federation losses at approximately 400,000 soldiers, he said quietly. Of those, 312,000 were from non-human species. Human losses were 88,000. They were the smallest force in the campaign, but they suffered fewer casualties than any other group, despite being in the heaviest fighting. And they caused 92% of all Corvan losses. The numbers were staggering. One species, new to the Federation, with inferior technology and fewer resources, had essentially won the war single-handedly. I was there, Torvax said. I served as an observer on one of the human ships. I saw what they did. I watched how they fought. And I will tell you honestly, it scared me. A delegate from the Harix Confederation stood up. His name was Krell, and he was known for asking difficult questions. Ambassador Torvax, Krell said, I appreciate your detailed account of the campaign, but I do not understand why this should concern us. The humans won a great victory. They saved the Federation. Should we not be grateful? Torvax nodded slowly. That is a fair question, Delegate Krell. And yes, we should be grateful. The humans did save us. Without them, the Corvan would have reached the core worlds within a year. But I must ask you to consider something. What happens when the next war comes? Krell frowned. We fight it, of course, and we would want the humans on our side. Would we? Torvax asked. Think about what I have told you. The humans do not follow orders when they disagree. They take risks that other species would never consider. They fight with a ferocity that borders on madness. Yes, they won against the Corvan, but the Corvan were machines. They had no allies, they had no civilians, they had no surrender. What happens when we face an enemy with cities, an enemy with families, an enemy that we might need to negotiate with? Do you trust the humans to stop when we ask them to? The hall fell silent. Torvax could see delegates thinking about his words. He could see the doubt forming in their minds. I want to share one more story with you, Torvax said. It happened near the end of the campaign at a place called Station Vila. Station Vila had been a Corvan supply depot. When the humans captured it, they found something unexpected: prisoners. The Corvan had taken captives from the systems they conquered. Scientists, engineers, workers. They kept them alive to study organic intelligence. They used them for experiments. When the human soldiers entered the prison section, they found over 2,000 aliens from 12 different species. They were weak. They were scared. They had been tortured. The human commander, Torvax said, was a young officer named Lieutenant James Torres. He was 23 years old. He had already been wounded twice in the campaign. When he saw the prisoners, he did something that was not in any battle plan. He took his entire unit off the front line and assigned them to protect and care for the captives. His superior officers ordered him back to combat. He refused. He said the prisoners were more important than taking the next objective. For 3 days, his soldiers treated wounds, found food, and comforted frightened aliens. They learned names. They heard stories. They held the hands of those who were dying. Lieutenant Tors personally sat with a Velthrin child for 6 hours, telling stories and making the child laugh, while the battle raged outside. Torvax paused. He could see confusion on some faces. "You are wondering why I tell you this story. It does not seem to support my argument." But it does. It is the same thing. The same passion that makes humans fight without stopping is the same passion that makes them care without stopping. They do not measure their response. They do not calculate how much effort to spend. When they fight with everything. When they care with everything. That is beautiful, and it is terrifying. Another delegate stood. She was from the Ordani, a species known for their logical thinking. "Ambassador," she said, "I find your concerns somewhat exaggerated. Surely the humans can be controlled. They are members of the Federation. They have signed our treaties. They follow our laws." Torvax laughed. It was not a happy sound. "Do they? Let me tell you about what happened after the war. When the campaign ended, High Command wanted to court Marshal General Chen for disobeying orders. They wanted to make an example of her. They wanted to show that Federation law applied to everyone. Do you know what happened? The human government refused. They said Chen was a hero. They said she had saved millions of lives. They said that if the Federation wanted to punish her, they would have to come and take her. And they made it clear that if anyone tried, the entire human military would resist. The hall erupted in murmurs. This was not widely known. The Federation had quietly dropped the charges rather than risk a confrontation. "The humans do not see authority the way we do," Torvax said. "They respect it when it serves their values. But when authority conflicts with what they believe is right, they will fight against it as hard as they fight against any enemy. That is not obedience. That is not cooperation. That is something else. They call it conscience." He looked around the room. "I have spent the last 2 years studying humans. I have read their history. I have spoken with their leaders. I have watched their society. And I have come to understand something important. Humans are not like us. They are not like any species in the Federation. They have a capacity for both destruction and creation that is beyond anything we have seen. Their history is filled with wars, terrible wars, wars that killed millions of their own kind. They have weapons that could destroy planets. They have ideologies that have caused incredible suffering. But their history is also filled with beauty, art and music and literature that moves the soul, science and medicine that saves lives, kindness and generosity that asks nothing in return. They contain both extremes. They live with both extremes, and somehow they survive." Torvax walked away from the podium and stood in the center of the floor. He looked up at the delegates surrounding him. "I am not proposing this ban because I hate the humans. I am proposing it because I admire them, and because I fear what could happen if we are not careful. If we continue to use humans in our wars, one of 2 things will happen. Either they will eventually face an enemy they cannot defeat and we will lose them, or they will win every war we send them to, and eventually they will realize that they do not need us. Neither outcome is acceptable. The humans must be protected from our enemies and from ourselves." A new voice rang out across the hall. It came from a section near the back where the human delegation sat. A woman stood up. She was tall and had gray hair. A scar ran across her left cheek. "Ambassador Torvax," she said, "may I speak?" Torvax recognized her immediately. It was Sarah Chen. "General Chen," he said, "of course the floor is yours." Chen made her way down to the central area. She walked slowly, and Torvax noticed she had a slight limp, a reminder of the wars she had fought. When she reached the center, she turned to face the assembly. Her eyes were calm and clear. "I have listened to Ambassador Torvax with great interest," she said. "He tells a good story. Most of it is even true." A few nervous laughs scattered through the hall. "But I think he has missed something important," Chen continued. "He has talked about what humans can do in war. He has talked about our victories, our ferocity, our passion. He has not talked about why." She paused and looked around the room. "Why do we fight the way we do? Why do we take risks that other species avoid? Why do we keep going when logic says we should stop?" "The ambassador says it is passion, and he is not wrong, but passion by itself is just energy. It is not direction, it is not purpose. We fight the way we do because we remember what we are fighting for." She held up her hand. "I want to tell you about a moment during the Corvin campaign. It happened at Vardek 5 during a battle that lasted for 8 days. We were pinned down in a factory complex. The Corvin had surrounded us. We had lost half our ammunition. We had no reinforcements coming. By every calculation, we should have died there. One of my soldiers, a young woman named Private Lisa Park, came to me on the 7th day. She was tired. She was wounded. She had watched friends die. She asked me a question. She said, 'General, why are we still fighting? Why do not we just give up?' Chen was quiet for a moment. I told her something that my grandmother told me when I was very young. My grandmother survived a terrible war on Earth. She lost her parents, her home, her entire village. She spent years as a refugee, moving from place to place, never knowing if she would eat or sleep safely. She told me, 'Sarah, we fight because there is always something worth protecting. A child who needs safety, a friend who needs help, a stranger who deserves kindness. As long as those things exist, we have a reason to keep going.' I told Private Park what my grandmother told me, and then I told her something else. I told her that somewhere in the galaxy, there were families sleeping safely because of what we were doing. There were children playing without fear. There were people living their lives without knowing that we existed. That is what we fight for, not glory, not conquest, not even survival. We fight for them, the ones who cannot fight for themselves." Chen looked directly at Torvax. "You are right that we are dangerous. You are right that we do not always follow orders. You are right that we fight with passion. But you are wrong about why. We are not dangerous because we want to destroy. We are dangerous because we want to protect. And when you are protecting something you love, there is no limit to what you will do." She turned to address the full assembly. "The ambassador fears that if you let humans fight your wars, we will become too powerful, that we will no longer need you, that we will turn against you. But he does not understand humans. We do not fight to gain power. We fight to give power to others. We fight so that others do not have to. We fight so that someday, maybe, no one will have to fight at all. If you ban us from your wars, we will not argue. We will not resist. We will respect your decision. But I ask you to consider this. The next time an enemy comes, the next time innocent lives are threatened, who will stand in the gap? Who will hold the line when all hope seems lost? You can calculate the odds. You can analyze the strategies. You can build the best weapons and train the finest soldiers. But when the darkness comes, when fear fills your heart, when everything logical says to run away, you will need something more. You will need passion. You will need courage. You will need that fire that does not go out. And that is what humans bring." Chen walked back toward the human section, but before she sat down, she turned one more time. "Private Park, the soldier who asked me why we keep fighting, she survived that battle. She survived the whole war. When it was over, she went home to Earth and became a teacher. She teaches children about history, about the wars humanity has fought, both the good and the bad. She teaches them about the cost of violence, and she teaches them about the importance of protecting the innocent. Last year, she won an award for being the best teacher in her region. Her students sent her letters thanking her for changing their lives. That is what humans do when the war is over. We do not seek more conquest. We do not build empires. We go home and we try to make things better. That is who we are. The hall was silent as Chen took her seat. Ambassador Torvac stood alone in the center of the chamber. The weight of the moment pressed down on him. He had prepared his arguments carefully. He had gathered evidence. He had truly believed, that he was doing the right thing. But now, looking at the faces of the delegates, looking at General Chen sitting calmly in her seat, he was not so sure. "General Chen," he said slowly, "I thank you for your words. They have given me much to think about." He walked back to the podium and stood there for a long moment, gathering his thoughts. "Perhaps I have been too focused on fear," he admitted. "Perhaps I have looked at human power and seen only danger. Perhaps I have not looked carefully enough at the purpose behind that power. But my concerns remain, not because I doubt human intentions, but because I understand what power can do. Even the best intentions can be corrupted. Even the most noble cause can be twisted." He looked at the assembly. "I propose a compromise, not a complete ban on human combat participation, but limitations, safeguards, rules that will protect both the Federation and the humans themselves." A delegate from the Solvari raised a hand. "What kind of limitations?" "First, humans may not comprise more than 20% of any Federation military force. This ensures that they remain partners, not dominators. Second, human forces must always operate under joint command with at least 2 other species. This ensures that multiple perspectives are considered in every decision. Third, any major military action must be approved by a council that includes human representation, but is not controlled by humans. This ensures that their passion is balanced by the wisdom of others. Fourth, and most importantly, humans will be prohibited from participating in any action against species that have requested negotiations or expressed a willingness to surrender." He looked at Chen. "General, can you accept these terms?" Chen stood again. She thought for a moment, then nodded slowly. "These limitations are reasonable," she said. "They acknowledge both our strengths and our weaknesses. They treat us as partners, not as weapons to be used or threats to be contained. On behalf of the Human Federation, I accept these terms." The hall erupted in discussion. Delegates turned to each other, talking rapidly. Some looked relieved, others looked uncertain. A few were clearly unhappy. After several minutes, the Speaker of the Council called for order. "We will now vote on the amended resolution. All those in favor." Lights flickered across the chamber as delegates cast their votes. The numbers climbed on the central display: green for yes, red for no. The final count was 247 in favor, 53 opposed. "The resolution passes," the Speaker announced. "Human participation in Federation military actions will be limited according to the terms specified." After the session ended, Torvax found himself walking beside General Chen in the corridor outside the Great Hall. They walked in silence for a moment before Chen spoke. "You know," she said, "I was not entirely honest in there." Torvax looked at her. "What do you mean?" "I said we would respect the Council's decision if they banned us completely, and we would have, but it would have hurt. Being banned would have felt like being told we are not trusted, like we are too dangerous to be allowed near others, like we are monsters that need to be kept away. Humans have spent a long time trying to prove that we can be trusted, that we can be part of something bigger than ourselves, that we can use our power for good. Your compromise gives us that chance." Torvax was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I have a confession as well." "Oh." "When I proposed the ban, I was afraid, truly afraid. I had seen what your soldiers could do. I had watched them fight with a fury that I could not understand. I thought that if we did not control you, eventually you would destroy everything. But listening to you today, I realized something. I was wrong about the nature of human passion. I saw it as a fire that would burn everything in its path. But fire can also warm. It can light the darkness. It can cook food and forge steel. Human passion is not the problem. It is how that passion is directed that matters. Chen smiled. Ambassador, I think we may have more in common than you realize. My grandmother used to say something similar. She said that every heart contains both fire and water. Fire can destroy, but it can also create. Water can nurture, but it can also drown. The key is balance, finding the right measure of each. They walked out onto a balcony that overlooked the city below. Ships flew between towering buildings. Lights of 100 colors painted the sky. Species from across the galaxy moved through the streets, living together in peace. The Federation has survived for 800 years, Torvax said. We have faced wars and disasters and challenges of every kind. We survive because we work together, because we trust each other. Humans are new to our family. You are different from us in many ways, but perhaps that is not a weakness. Perhaps it is a strength. Different perspectives can see things that similar ones miss. Different strengths can accomplish what uniform ones cannot. Chen nodded. On Earth we have a saying, it takes all kinds to make a world. I like that saying, Torvax said. It applies well to the Federation. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the city below. Finally Chen spoke. What will you do now, Ambassador? Your original resolution did not pass. Some might see that as a defeat. Torvax considered the question. I will do what I have always done. I will watch, I will learn, I will try to understand. And perhaps, in time, I will stop being afraid of humans. Perhaps I will learn to see the beauty in your fire, as well as the danger. Chen turned to face him. Ambassador, would you like to visit Earth someday? I could show you my grandmother's village. It has been rebuilt now. There is a memorial there for those who died in the war. But there is also a garden filled with flowers and trees and life. Children play there. Families gather on warm days. Old people sit on benches and remember. That garden is what we fight for, not the victory, the garden, the life that comes after. Torvax felt something shift in his heart. For the first time since the Corvan campaign, the fear that had lived inside him began to fade. I would like that very much, General Chen. I would like that very much indeed. The stars turned overhead as two former adversaries became something new. Not enemies, not even allies. Friends. And in the great archive of the Federation Council, the record of that day was filed with a simple note. Resolution 7742, amended. Human combat participation limited but not banned. Result: new understanding between species. It was not the overwhelming victory that humans had won on the battlefield, but in some ways it was more important, because it proved something that the numbers and reports and statistics could never show. Humanity was not just a weapon to be used and feared. It was a family to be welcomed and loved. And that was worth more than any battle ever won.